So Bayern Munich are potentially out of the Bundesliga title race after a 3-0 win for Bayer Leverkusen against Bayern Munich on Saturday night. Manu and I are here. Manu sitting on his balcony during his holiday in Hawaii. That's how big a moment this was, that we had to pull him out of his holiday to talk about this. Manu, this game was absolutely crazy. I actually predicted Leverkusen to beat this. You predicted that they'd certainly come close and had every chance of winning it, but I don't think either of us really thought it would be this easy for them.
Yeah, it was decisive, wasn't it? Looking back, of course, you always think, yeah, they're up 1-0, but it's still Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich can always come back, right? Then they're up 2-0, and you think, okay, well, 2-0, that's good, but it's still Bayern Munich, right? You think that they would come back. But then, around the 70th or 80th minute mark, Bayern Munich really just gave up, didn't they? And then they conceded that third. I call it a classic empty netter that you usually only see in hockey with Manuel Neuer trying to go up there and score as well. It's very seldom that you see that kind of goal in football, right? But now when I actually look back on the whole match, and as I'm writing down my thoughts, and, I read Matt Ford's really excellent article on the Substack as well, it really was never really that close, was it? Bayern Munich had a ton of possession to start the match with. They seemingly controlled the ball, but they did not control the match. Harry Kane had 7 touches in the first half overall, right? None in the box. I think he finished the game with 8 touches overall. I think he touched the ball once in the box in the second half, which was like a half header kind of thing. Bayern never really had a chance, Stefan.
Yeah, Harry Kane actually came and did the post-match interview with the World Feed, and, first and foremost, that's very brave of him to do that. Players don't usually want to step in front of the camera after a result like this, but it was good that he did. And, without being overly dismissive or overly critical, he did kind of point a finger at the setup, at the lack of chances, the lack of service for him, and you can completely understand why. This felt like a game in which Thomas Tuchel just completely got his tactics wrong. From Sasha Boey at left back to the back five, it felt like a game to me that Bayern desperately missed Joshua Kimmich. It was a game in which, when I saw that lineup, I did think, okay, maybe Eric Dyer steps up and it becomes a midfield 3. And then that's when Bayern tried to kind of dominate with runners like Pavlovic or Goretzka, but there was no one in that Bayern team pulling the strings. And, for all of Kimmich's apparent faults in Thomas Tuchel's eyes for not being the classic number 6, he has this season been one of Bayern's top players for key passes into the box. He's the guy that Harry Kane really feeds off of, even if it does sometimes go through Leroy Sané first. And I think it's no coincidence that him being on the bench, and the fact that Sané and Harry Kane just could not get on the ball, I don't think that's a coincidence at all. And yes, of course, Leverkusen were outstanding and their tactics were spot on. Just on that for a moment, I really thought that, when I saw that Leverkusen lineup, at first I was a little confused, but then I thought, well, actually, it makes sense, because if Bayern are going to push up, you'd rather have Adli and Tella making those runs rather than someone like Patrick Schick, who has certainly plenty of talents, but he's not the quickest player. And that's basically what they did. They played off of Florian Wirtz, who just simply played those balls to Tella and Adli all day long. And, even though it was a Grimaldo, 1-2, they got a second goal, and it was a kind of moment of off-the-ball madness for the first goal. Time and time again, Florian Wirtz got on the ball, ran down the pitch, and he was almost dragging that team forward at times. And the whole game just kind of played off of his almost axis in that mid, and that almost played as a second striker at times, actually, which I was quite intrigued by. But Bayern just had absolutely no answer to that. And on top of the fact that they basically neutered their own attack with that weird fullback setup and no Kimmich in the team, that it just meant that they were just so poor. And at the end of the day, it was a pretty easy win for Leverkusen.
Yeah, we have to also talk about Sasha Boey a bit, right? He has to play the reverse side because of Davies' injury. I think poor Sasha is probably still looking for Stanisic in the box. He was the goal happened so quick, and when Stanisic put it in, I'm like, how did that happen? It took me a few replays to actually figure out how it actually all came about, right? But Boey completely lost his man there, and I think there is quite a bit to the story that Bayern Munich loans Josef Stanisic to Leverkusen on summer deadline day, thinking that they would bring in another right back. Whoever that was, it failed, right? Then in the winter, they have to go out and buy Sasha Boey from Galatasaray for 30 million euros. And the guy that they loaned out, not only did he score the goal, that probably, decided the match, because from then on, it was an easy path for Leverkusen. But it was also the guy who came in to replace him that made the mistake defensively. And, that's just so much. There's such a big metaphor for Bayern Munich's season this year, right? It just got off to such a wrong start in terms of how they put the squad together. And yes, I feel bad for Sasha Boey, because I think he is an excellent player, and he was playing out of position. But it just tells you everything you need to know about what's going on at Bayern Munich. And they need to be perfect for the rest of the way if they want to catch this Leverkusen side and hope that Leverkusen drops 6. It has to be 6 points, because right now Leverkusen have the better goal differential. That is such, I think, you look at the table and you say, okay, it's just 6 points, but that is such a tough task if Leverkusen just keep playing the way they're playing.
Yeah, absolutely. The Sasha Boey thing made all the more bizarre following Tuchel's comments, actually, at post-match, when he said, well, we played him there because we need someone to combat the speed of Frimpong or Tella. It turns out to be Tella in this game. But, that only suggests to me that, Tuchel's taken one look at Guerrero and said, well, he's not good enough to play left wing-back for us, which ponders the question, why did you sign him in the first place? Because they did sign him to be a central midfielder. Which, just kind of adds to your argument about how the transfer policy is all over the place. Nothing to be said of the fact that they finished the game with Eric Dyer in central defence instead of Upamecano or whoever else, So there's definitely something to be said there for the fact that this squad is just all 6s and 7s. And, if you wanted to be kind to Bayern, you could say, yes, they're missing Davies. Yes, Kimmich was out injured or couldn't start the game. Serge Gnabry's out, Kingsley Coman's out. However, you then look at the opposite team. They're missing Boniface, Hoffman's on the bench, Frimpong's on the bench. They're missing 2. That's 3 of the top 5 players this season. Xabi Alonso finds a way. He finds a way, not only finds a way, but he actually takes 2 of his best players this season out of the team to change the tactics, to adapt to what he thinks Bayern will bring to this game. And I honestly just couldn't be more impressed with the way he tactically set up for this game, because instead of saying, this is how we play, we're going to keep playing that way, and if Bayern beat us at it, then fair play to them. He said, no, Bayern are going to come here with the intention of winning. They're going to be flimsy at the back. Let's get our quickest forwards and have them play offloading verts and cause hell all game. And that's exactly what they did. So, you could argue about injured players or out-of-form players till the cows come home, but at the end of the day, Xabi Alonso got far more out of his squad than Thomas Tuchel did.
Well, I mean, Leverkusen, in some ways, missed one of their most important, maybe the most important player other than Florian Wirtz in Palacios. You cannot overstate how important Palacios has been for Leverkusen this season, and he did not feature at all. I think Xhaka was maybe at 50%. He picked up that knock in the first half, and he did not look fit at all, and yet it was still enough. What really impressed me is Leverkusen went against their principles by giving Bayern Munich the ball. They are the team that wants to have the ball. Xabi Alonso, we call him the next Pep Guardiola for some odd reason, for good reasons. But it's not necessarily fair because they're 2 different people. But he does like to have the ball, and he said, "No, in this game, I'm gonna give I give Bayern the perceived tactical advantage of having the ball because it's actually going to suit us better," and it worked. And I think that is something that is really important here.
Yeah, that was really interesting, actually, because I did think that during the game, like, this is such a weird kind of move from Alonso. But then I thought, well, in his first season at Leverkusen, when he was basically trying to just kind of steady the ship, the first thing he did was say, look, we're going to fix this defence. We're going to make sure we stop conceding goals. We're going to play actually super defensively and just kind of grind out results and take it from there. And I thought it was really interesting that basically he reverted back to that basic principle, which is what he did at day one when he came into Leverkusen. He said and this is a team that were like potentially having to fight off relegation. He said the only way we're going to get back up the tables is if we stop shipping goals. And that's kind of been at the heart of his kind of system at Leverkusen since day one. Everyone checks out the Florian Wirtz dribbles or the Frimpong runs or the Grimaldo free kicks, but the success of this Leverkusen team under Alonso has always been their ability to stop the ball going in the back of their own net. Hiradecky didn't even break a sweat in this game, and I think that's such a huge testament. But I don't know, have you anything else to add, Mario, before we wrap this up?
No, I think we broke it down quite well, and of course, there was going to be some additional thoughts. Curious to hear what Matt has to say on the main show as well. But I think for a quick reaction, that pretty much does it.
Yeah, absolutely. As Mario said, we will be doing the main show this week. And of course, we'll also have our bonus shows for paid subscribers on the Substack. So if this is your first time checking us out or you're a regular listener, do make sure you have a look at our Substack. Check out the podcast as well. Subscribe if you would like. And yeah, until the next big Bundesliga game, Mario, I guess that's that. I'll let you finish up, shall I say?
Absolutely. Until next time, auf Wiedersehen.